I have brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire.
Your new empire?
Don't make me kill you.
Anakin, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Planet Film Network podcast feed. I am one of your hosts, as always, Sean Monk.
And I'm your other host, TJ Cornwell, and we are back today for another 1 hour movie with a special guest. Our very special guest, as always, Mr. Brandon Freeman, joining us for I don't know how many times it's been at this point, but maybe a fifth or sixth time. Hello, Brandon.
How's it going, guys?
We're good. How are you, Sean?
I am doing very well. Very excited, as we have been the last 2 weeks, to dive into this movie and talk about it. Very excited. Very excited to have Brandon as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, so, and by the way, Brandon, and Sean, if you want to make a note of this, because I'm just going to go on a tangent real quick. If we ever mess up or anything, we have like a gap, we could just edit it out, like what I'm saying right now. So, you know, if you ever like don't know what to say and need to pause or whatever, it's fine. All right, so I guess first today, we're going to be talking about Revenge of the Sith, leading up, of course, to the Obi-Wan-Kenobi series that will be coming out on Disney Plus next week. We've done Phantom Menace, we've done Attack of the Clones, and this is the final episode leading up to that show. So usually we start off these shows asking each other, you know, how we came to the movie, or more saying, you know, when you first saw the movie and what was your first reaction to the movie. So since Brandon's the guest, let's start off with him. Brandon, when did you can recall first seeing this movie, and what was your kind of opinion of it when you first saw it?
All right, so I remember seeing this movie opening night in theaters with my next door neighbor. We had went to the movie theater in the Galleria, and so my first takeaway was I was absolutely blown away by how well I liked it. Aside from the fact of Mace Windu dying in the middle of the movie, he was one of my favorite characters, and it just really upset me that, as a kid, I was 11 years old at the time, I really hated movies where a lot of my favorite characters died. That's why Phantom Menace was really hard for me. But other than that, I love the movie. I walked out probably is the same way I feel today, which is the best Star Wars movie.
Wow, that's a bold opinion. Which we've probably talked about too on our ranking, because I think you were on for that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Me and Sean had it.
Yeah. Sean, how about you? When did you first see this movie, and then what was your opinion when you came out of it?
Yeah, so like we kind of talked about with last week's show on Attack of the Clones, that was like one of the earliest movies I saw in theaters, but barely remember it type of thing. This one I definitely remember, like, going to the actual theater, seeing it, like, remember the hype, like some of the hype of, oh my god, finally get to see, you know, what happens in the end type of thing. And I just really, really liked it. I loved it when it first came out. I just remember being like, you know, sad, even though, like, you know, seeing 4, 5, and 6 obviously before, you know, seeing 4, 5, and 6 before, you already kind of know where it ends up, but it's just like actually seeing it play out and stuff, and especially just because, like, I feel like even though I had that information, I feel like when you're like a young kid, you kind of don't like think about it in the moment type of thing. So I just remember being like really like shocked and like sad at everything that happened, and then kind of being like, oh wow. But then, you know, also really, really, you know, liking it as a good movie back then. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something we also talked about, like, in the previous 2 episodes too. Like, prequels are definitely kind of, you know, showing you more of the politics side, or at least Phantom Menace, I think, maybe mostly does that. shows you know how they got to the story of the original trilogy. For me, I first saw this movie. I don't know what year it was. I was probably in. I was either in middle. I might have been in middle school. I want to say, probably like 6th or 7th grade. I remember watching. I know I seen it for the first time at my friend's house. I think he had all 3 of the prequels on DVD. So I think I might have mentioned in a different episode that I watched. I might have watched Phantom Menace with him as well. But I know watching this, I didn't really know much about Star Wars at the time, so I think I was probably a little bit confused on what was going on. I was also young, so it's kind of like, you know, I don't really know what's going on, nor do I really care, I guess, and I don't, you know, really care about the whole kind of everything going on in this universe. Mm-hmm. That's probably where my fear of, and if you don't know this, by the way, I have a fear of Palpatine in these movies. He scares the shit out of me, and I'm pretty sure this is where that came from. So it wasn't episode 6, which I had seen first. It was probably this one, because his face very scary, very yellow eyes. I was just saying earlier before we started recording. If anybody has played Pokemon Gale of Darkness out there, his eyes remind me of the main villain in that game. But yeah, I want to say, like, I didn't really, you know, it was probably a good movie at the time, but I thought it was good, but I didn't really care all that much. You know, it's not till, you know, maybe, you know, however many years ago when I actually started caring about Star Wars again, is when I actually, you know, began to like the movie and realize, you know, for me at least, it's the best out of the prequels. And I think that's probably, you know, the majority of people probably agree with that. I'm not with Brandon on the whole best Star Wars movie. I think that's a pretty wild take for me, but you know, it's all opinion based. But yeah, I love where the movie goes and how it gets there and the story that it expands upon. And then it just has some of the best duels in Star Wars, or at least one of them, which I think we can all agree with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, we touched a little bit in the last episode on the lightsaber duels in the prequels, and then also throughout the entire franchise. And I think you're absolutely right. I think when we went through it quickly, we realized there's like 4 lightsaber duels just in this movie, which is you know, crazy, the amount of, you know, lightsaber on lightsaber like fights that we actually got in this. I got more in this movie than, you know, the entire sequel trilogy. It's just like insane. But yeah, I just remember, you know, that was always so awesome. Seeing the lightsaber fights, seeing again as brief as it was, it's more of even a disarm than a dual wield like fight. But seeing Anakin again with like the 2 lightsabers is awesome. I remember that was always really cool. And then also just the end fight. And this I do remember from, I don't know if it was the very first time I saw it or whatever, but when I was really younger, just loving the fact that it was 2 blue lightsabers fighting on this like volcanic planet. Like the fact that I was like, oh, I like that, like he still had like when I was a kid, like, oh, Anakin still has his Jedi lightsaber. You know what I mean? Like that's awesome that like it's not just, oh, he's bad, so it immediately switched to a red and blue and stuff. And then also even as funny as like that is, you know, the lightsaber, the quick lightsaber duel in Palpatine's office when, you know, as Mace says, this party's over. I remember really loving that too.
Yeah.
And it's probably like a stretch too, but you know how like even like with the blue lightsaber and everything, and obviously he just doesn't have access to like a new red one, but it's also kind of like it supports Padme's like thing that when she says to Obi-Wan, she says they're still good at him, and I guess you can kind of connect that in a way. It's probably like a little bit of a reach, but you know, he still has a lightsaber, so he's still got something that he can, you know, connect back to the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
But obviously, you know, A New Hope and everything that's gone. Brandon, is there anything specifically, you know, like you want to talk about, like as far as maybe like Obi-Wan the character goes, the relationship with him and Anakin? Just like, for example, like last week, what I brought up is I thought it was interesting watching it again, that how Obi-Wan refers to Anakin as a brother, and then Anakin looks at Obi-Wan as a father, and I just thought that was an interesting dynamic with the way they look at each other different.
Yeah, so one thing I want to touch before I answer this question is that whole fight at the end. I count 5. I don't mean to correct you, Sean, but I think there are 5 total lightsaber duels. But the fight at the end, John Williams is in his bag, and this might be another hot take, but Battle of the Heroes is better than Duel of the Fates. Now, Duel of the Fates is more iconic, but like when you actually listen to Battle of the Heroes and like the story that you're watching, it's my favorite score of all of the whole saga. And then the lightsaber duel with the 2 blues is amazing in the dark room. Very well done. But then finally to your question about the whole relationship, I am a younger brother of someone that I've looked up to since I was born. I mean, we are the closest brothers that I know. We're the only people that really like hang out with each other's friends. So it was always like symbolic to how I felt towards him. And then when you see him like start to turn on Obi-Wan, it's like you're like maturing out of your own relationship, as I felt as though I was getting ready to do. So it was more symbolic towards me, and I connected more with Anakin more than Obi-Wan, even though Obi-Wan was my favorite character. But that whole dynamic of, you know, like following him around and like trying to learn as much as you can and then going off on your own, it was like the perfect description of what was going on in my life at the time with my older brother.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, it's interesting the more I think about it, like with this movie. I feel like he does, and I think Anakin does this probably a decent amount during the or at least the 2 movies that Hayden's in. He does a decent amount of like flip-flopping where he'll you know, be like so grateful, and he'll say like, oh my God, like, you know, you've taught me everything I know. And then the next scene, he's like, I fucking hate him, you know, like it's this very like interesting dynamic that he has with Obi-Wan. And I think you see it like a decent amount in this, where I think when Obi-Wan's going to find Grievous, and, you know, he gives him like the little like, oh, I'm so proud of you, you know, and, you know, you think they like have this really good moment, but then in the back of Anakin's head, he's probably like, you know, 50-50, like, you know, this guy has been with me forever and he's taught me everything I know, but at the same time, it's like he's holding me back. He's on the council. They're holding me back. They don't want to make me a master. It's this whole thing. And I think they do a really good job in the prequels in general of just kind of conveying that. And obviously, like, the Clone Wars, like, the show really builds on the relationship. I mean, obviously, you need that. But the movies, when it was just the movies, I think that did a really good job at that. My opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to kind of get into a little bit of the movie here. So we start off with obviously the Battle of Coruscant, which which actually on this rewatch, I really feel like specifically the Battle of Coruscant does not get enough credit for really how similar it is to some things in the original trilogy. Like some of the even same lines are lifted straight from the original trilogy, with it either being from, you know, A New Hope or Return of the Jedi. With a lot of the clones even saying stuff like, you know, I can't shake him, you know, he's all over me, you know, it's like, it's even the exact same lines in some of it. But I really this is why I love when I rewatch things or you know, not try to watch for the first time, but definitely when I rewatch things, I watch it with the subtitles on, just because even if you can hear everything, you just glean so much more from stuff. And so, like, I guess there was just these little interactions right off the bat at the start of the movie that I almost feel like I never even noticed before, which is crazy. Like the moment where it felt so much like Clone Wars, like it might as well have been Rex with him, if he wasn't busy on Mandalore. It might as well have been Rex with him, where the one ship gets shot, and Anakin goes, "I'm going to help them," and Obi-Wan says, "They're doing their job so that we can do ours." Get back on, and it's a good way to remind the audience, and it's something that I remembered and realized and everything in this, that even though there's been a literal war in between, even though it's years later, Anakin still has that same tendency of that we saw in Attack of the Clones of, put the ship down, you'll be expelled from the Jedi Order, and I don't care. He still has that same level of, maybe he has a tighter leash on himself, or maybe it's Obi-Wan, having the tighter leash on him. We don't really know yet as an audience at this point in the movie, since it's the first scene. But kind of seeing that even though he's a little more reined in, Anakin's first impulse is still always to do the quick thing, the thing that's like, no, that's what makes sense to do. I need to go do that. And I think that that being set up right in the first scenes of the movie is fantastic. And also all the little jabs and nods and stuff to them as they're getting into the ship, I think is really, really great. The kind of lends to that dynamic that, they're so famous for. I just love that.
Yeah, I agree. I could see, where you're coming from, how it's it's kind of like, you don't really talk about it as much when you're talking about the movie in general. But would you agree with me as well, like what I said earlier before we started recording, whereas I felt like watching it again, that first 10 minutes is really played for laughs, and I don't really know why. And again, I'll say we're not trying to review the movie, I think. I just thought it was interesting because it felt like a completely different tone than from the rest of the movie, where, the rest of the movie is honestly pretty, it's pretty bleak, I feel like, throughout. This turn is coming and everything's going to happen, and, Jedi are basically almost wiped out completely. But at the beginning, it's really they're having quips back and forth where they're flying their ships. You have the R2 kind of taking out the two super, what are they called?
Super battle droids.
Super battle droids, the oil over, lighting them on fire. It's all kind of one big laugh. And then as soon as we get to kind of feel once we get that ship back on the ground, Coruscant, I feel like that's when the tone is oh no, this is a bleaker story now. It's not all fun and games. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, even in the deleted scene with the whole plan where they dual lightsaber through the ground and they go into the sewer area. That was a whole joking scene where they were no, don't do that. It's too dangerous. There's too many of them, and they're doing all the signals.
I actually have a question for you guys. This question came up for me and this might be addressed in Clone Wars. I don't remember, or in a novel or something that's canon. But how in the throne, I don't know if it's throne, when Anakin is cutting off, or Anakin is ordered by Palpatine to cut off Dooku's head, what is the what do you think the surprise factor is for Dooku? Does he know that he's going to die, or do you because his face, I don't know if it's a face where it's I gotta sell this, or if it's a face where it's whoa, wait a minute, you're gonna have him kill me? I thought we were on the same side. What do you think the range is where it's yeah, I knew this was coming, or it's well, this is a shock?
I think to Dooku, if you're just talking about Dooku's reaction, I think it is intense shock and what? Because, but then if you flip that with Palpatine, I think at this point, Palpatine was all right, one of these openings soon, I need to get Dooku moving on down, down the road, But that being said, I think even for Palpatine, he went, all right, like probably 5 minutes before, when he was like, oh, okay, Anakin and Obi-Wan are really probably going to take this guy out. I think he probably went, yep, this is as good a time as any, so let's do it. So I don't even know how much it was premeditated on with just Palpatine deciding to do it himself, let alone Dooku being in on it. That's just my opinion, though. What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, so I think this is also like a piggyback of what you said earlier with like the whole Anakin's instant reaction thing. Like he contemplates it. He sits there and he goes, "Oh, well, this isn't the right thing to do." But then he hears that older voice in his head, just like Obi-Wan, and then realizes like this is the right thing to do. He's too dangerous to be left alive, just like Palpatine says. So I think it's also, like you said, like a shock factor. I think Dooku probably thought he was going to be taken alive because that's the Jedi way, but then lo and behold, and on to the next one.
Yeah. It's such a wild... I just think that's, like, such a wild scene, because we don't get anything more... Yeah, exactly. Like, not even that... Like, that image that you're showing us right now, like, that is like a plea. That's the face of a, please don't kill me.
Yeah.
But when he just... Palpatine just does, like, the, good, kill him.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? Like, that is just such a, like, that's just such a, like, a... Oh, I thought I had more time, but I guess I didn't.
Yeah, there he is. Yeah, and then I love to, like you said, it is definitely, like, a pretty comical... I mean, it's pretty dark what Anakin actually does. But like you said, everything around it's pretty comical. It actually reminds me of the first arc of season 7 of Clone Wars, when Anakin finally kills Admiral Trench, the like spider guy in Clone Wars, after their like third fight throughout the series. And Anakin's like, he's having a blast, but his version of having a blast in that episode is when he finally kills him, he puts his lightsaber, straight through him, and is just like, well, I guess the general won't be coming back. It's like, you literally, like, brutally murdered that guy. Like, sure, he was a separatist and, like, a war criminal, but, it's kind of the same thing here, where he's just like, Rex, I think we could say, he won't be a problem after all. And it's like, you just murdered him. Like, you could have easily taken him prisoner, you know what I mean? Like, so it shows you that, like, how intense that is. And I think, if anything, he did question himself more with Dooku, because we know that, even with the Tusken Raiders and everything, like, Anakin knows that the things that he's doing, aren't good or shouldn't be done. But, at the same time, he keeps falling back into them. You know what I mean? So he can realize his mistakes all he wants, but, he keeps falling back into the similar trap of everything, and I really, really like that. And then I do like, seeing Grievous, too, in his full gigantic, glory. Yeah,
I wish I could go back, like, to when this movie came out and see what the reaction was to Grievous. If people were like, felt he was menacing, or if people were expecting something more than just this, guy with this droid with these eyes. Then we also find out he's a beating heart as well.
I will say this, people always say, like, I feel like every 5 or 10 years or whatever, there's one of those, like, CG characters that you're like, that is literally so good. I can't imagine it ever looking bad with time. And I feel like General Grievous, being an entirely CG character, he is in the same camp as, like, Davy Jones from the Pirates movies, or, like, Thanos, that's like, you just nailed it, looking so perfectly, first of all, like, HD, like, it's like there's nothing about Grievous that looks non-photorealistic to begin with, but then just how well they do it. But like Grievous and Davy Jones and Thanos, like, there's nothing about this that feels uncanny valley. There's nothing about this that makes me doubt that it's a real breathing, whatever character. And I think that Grievous definitely falls into that. And I think, that's not to say, oh, Jar Jar looks bad. Like, this is also the best that Jar Jar's ever looked. But, like, when you put, like, just even the 6-year difference of, like, Jar Jar and Phantom Menace next to, Grievous in this movie, it'd be like a puppet versus, a real person. Like, it's literally just that good. It's just crazy. And it baffles me every time I see it, because every time I'm like, all right, we've had so many good fully CG characters and creatures and stuff. Now, is Grievous still going to look good? And whether it's these opening scenes or on, like, Utapau, he still looks fantastic in every single time I see it.
Yeah, and real quick, I think that's something, too, like, something I thought to myself as well while watching this. It's like, we talked about the CG and Phantom Menace, and I think there's, like, it's undoubtedly, like, as these movies went on, the CG just got, like, better and better each movie. Was it nominated for this one as well, or no? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'll pull it up.
All right, so I guess while you're doing that, I just wanted to say something about the whole Grievous thing.
Yeah.
And you had asked about, like, how people felt about this, and I just remember, and, like, I played all the Star Wars games as, like, the kids, and so I just remember getting out of, like, the whole Grievous section in this movie and being like, gosh, I really wish he was in the first 2 movies, or, like, had some kind of, like, bigger role in the first 2 movies, because he was such a good villain, and I know the main villain is supposed to be Anakin and Palpatine towards the end, but if they would have done more focusing on Grievous, I thought the movie could have, like, he could have backpacked the main antagonist for at least a movie or 2.
See, this is like the thing with the villains of the prequels is, you could say, man, I wish Grievous was, like, the main, like, villain, because the Emperor, like you said, the Emperor is obviously the overarching villain of all of the Star Wars film, of all of the Skywalker saga. But then you kind of have your, like, trilogy villain, which, in this case I would say is, you have your, like, kind of your trilogy villain, like Vader, or, it's still the Emperor in the sequels, but you also have that Snoke or the Emperor layer above Kylo. But then this movie is, like, it's the Emperor again, but that second villain doesn't stay for the whole trilogy. So you're like, I wish that Grievous was the villain for the whole trilogy. He just would have been so much more fleshed out. Still a great character, but he would have been so much more fleshed out. You could say the same thing, and I'm not taking anything away from your point. I'm just emboldening your point. You could say you could say the same thing with Dooku. You could say the same thing with Maul. It's like those 3 characters are so good, and they hit them so well. But it's just like, man, if we could have just picked one and stuck with it, this would have been, like, crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
It's been so good.
I agree, and I think, like, what you're saying is right on, because you can't take Dooku or Darth Maul out of the first 2 films. They were way too good. And I think even to, like, compare the point is, like, Jango Fett in the second movie.
Yeah.
I think Jango Fett was a great villain, but, he's only there for 1 movie, because you can't sit there and give a backstory on Jango Fett when you have Count Dooku as the main overarching villain in just episode 2. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the whole Emperor thing in the prequels is the main villain. So it's like I said, that's my initial take from when I first watched the movie, was that Grievous was just such a badass villain that I walked down when I wish I got more of that.
Something I thought was funny, and this is just, like, something that I just noticed while watching it. Do you notice that they just start calling him the Emperor out of nowhere?
Grievous?
Or is that just me?
No.
Does anybody ever be like, oh, he's the Emperor now? Because I felt like, I don't know who it was that originally said it, but I just noticed they started saying just the Emperor, and I was like, well, when did we start calling him that? Because, like, Obi-Wan still say Chancellor Palpatine. But I think, like, Yoda says the Emperor or something.
Mm-hmm.
I did not notice.
Okay. I just thought that was funny.
Well, doesn't he call him... Yeah, I mean, Yoda calls him Emperor in the final battle, but that's after he changes it to an Empire.
Yeah, when he walks into the room.
Because remember that
that's a good point. I didn't think
whole
about that.
thing happens. Like, Anakin's fall happens
right.
like halfway through. But yeah, I know
You're
what
right.
you mean.
That is a very good. I never really associated that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Empire, Emperor. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about that Yoda and Palpatine fight, though? How do we feel about that? How do you feel about the look of it and everything, and throwing the Senate, little podiums around and everything?
Scale of it was great.
Yeah.
This is why the movie is just my favorite out of all of them, because every single half hour is jam-packed with great storytelling plus good action, if not great action. And that, when he first arrives in the room, and then they just have the Force battle, and then they have the lightsaber battle, and then they have another Force battle where they're sitting there, like you said, throwing the chairs back and forth, and then ultimately Yoda retreating. But it's just going to show that Yoda is always thought of as the best with the Force, and then when he's matched up against Palpatine, there isn't really one that outpowers the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought it was. I think it's a fantastic fight. I do wish it wasn't. I kind of wish it was his own thing. Like I told, I was saying to Sean, I think Brian, when you walked away earlier, or maybe you were there. I never realized. I didn't remember that it was intertwined with the Obi-Wan Anakin fight, and I think I would have rather had it where it's it's separate thing. Because I think for me, I would, and there is a decent chunk of a fight in there, but I think I would have rather had a little bit more. But yeah, like you said, between the two, there's never really they both get their punches in, it's never you never feel oh, one is way stronger than the other. I do feel if it came down to it, Yoda just has some more tricks in the bag that he could pull out. Because it seems like nobody else knows how to do the whole absorb with your hand thing.
Yeah.
I mean, when Mace can do it with his lightsaber, I think isn't that established?
Yep.
Yep.
Right. But Yoda's full, we see it in Attack of the Clones, he's just keeping the energy, and it's what that,
so powerful.
and the same with the space, the whole kind of Palpatine's office is the bottom of the Senate space, and then it's rising up, and they're in and that whole thing is so cool. And him throwing the Senate levitator things at him, and then him catching the one and spinning it like a frisbee or whatever, throwing it back at him, that is all so cool. And I think it adds a lot to the movie. And I would say neither of them really win, because they both, Yoda kind of just falls down, and they both get repelled, I guess, by each other. But yeah, I agree. I think that it's definitely it's definitely one I look back very fondly, that fight.
Battle of the Heroes just intertwines that whole scene with both duels going on at the same time very well. It's just oh my god, this is the heavyweight fight. And then you look at the other side, and it's still just as big as a heavyweight fight. It's your two top dogs, and then the two right under them. It doesn't get any better than that.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about it. I mean, why kind of skirt around it? Let's just talk about that fight, the Mustafar fight, the end, everything with that. The speech at the end, taking the lightsaber. I hate you. All that stuff. You have done that yourself. There's so much to go into and talk about with just kind of that end scene with Mustafar specifically. Also, finally, after all this time, one of the longest surviving prequel characters, finally Nute Gunray bites it at Mustafar. To quote C.O. Bibble, after 10 years and 4 cases in the court, he's still the viceroy of the Trade Federation. And he lasts the whole Clone Wars, too.
Yeah.
But
couldn't that be Grievous?
No, I agree. Yeah, totally. Or
like,
even
why couldn't that
or
be where
here's
Grievous
an idea.
was like?
What if they had just written it that, instead of the Trade Federation, if it was like, or it still could have been the Trade Federation, but base it on Sereno and have the Count Dooku be the leader of the Trade Federation, and then the Trade Federation becomes the Separatists. Whoa. But, no, that being said, whether it's him wiping out the Separatists or then Padme and Obi-Wan finally showing up, let's just get into all of it with the
we gotta
final battle.
Yeah, we got to start there with the whole dialogue. And it's like a meme dialogue that like every person who's watched Star Wars can recite that whole dialogue between Anakin and Obi-Wan, but like that's great. Like that is such a good start to like, and it like ties up their relationship and gets the whole fight started perfectly with the whole thing with he's brought peace and security to his new empire, and then like that like takes Obi-Wan aback because he's just like, you've been doing democracy. Yeah, like you've been protecting democracy, not like you serve democracy, not empires. Like, who do I even know you anymore? So like this is not the person that I trained. You clearly have turned, even though like I know that you've killed younglings. I now have seen it myself. You've said it to me yourself. And even where he's just like, if you're not with me, then you're against me. He like still wants Obi-Wan to be there with him, but then ultimately they both make their choices to be against one another, and then the greatest lightsaber duel out of the whole saga occurs.
Okay. You're not taking Rey and Kylo Ren on
Kylo,
the Death Star
I knew you were
going to
ask it. Nope.
Come on, man. Kef beer. You don't like the Kef beer duel is better than the Mustafar duel?
or Finn versus Kylo in Force Awakens, but no.
Come on,
I'm taking
man.
They use the environment perfectly. They use their dialogue perfectly. They use like how Obi-Wan has taught Anakin everything, so they're using the same moves constantly.
Yeah, perfect mirror of each other.
Yeah, and I've heard like, oh, this fight is too choreographed, so it's not good enough. And so I just like fire back and say the guy they grew up together. They've taught like Obi-Wan has taught Anakin everything. And so now they're like trying to one up each other by moves that they've learned, and it's the same thing, so it's really hard to. But then eventually Anakin overestimates his power, and finito to the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed. No, I love that fight. The whole kind of, master apprentice type, dynamic. Obviously, it's gone throughout the entire prequel trilogy. All comes out in that fight. And I completely agree with you too. Like the whole kind of like they're both matching each other because they both know each other so well that they even have like we made fun of it, but the whole like hand kind of force pushing each other, and then they both just kind of repel back. I thought was really
because it just shows they're perfectly even matched right now.
Right. Obviously dialogue a bit clunky in the beginning, but you get the point across where it's like obviously like Anakin is not in the same headspace that he was, in the first movie, second movie, etc. He's gone. He slipped into the dark side, and it's clear from what he's saying, and it just goes back to the me and Sean talked about in the Attack of the Clones episode when he's talking to Padme, and when they're talking about the government, and he's like, well, they should be made to. And then she's like, that sounds like a dictatorship. And he goes, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
if it works.
Just kind of goes back to that. Yeah. And me and Sean were like, I think he's like joking, but he's like not joking, like in that moment. And, just kind of all comes around back full circle. Like everything he said has led up to this point. But yeah, and And Obi-Wan doesn't kill him. He says to Yoda, he's like, I cannot kill him. And he doesn't kill him. Like, he stays true to his word, even though, it seems at points like if he needs to, like, he's going to put this through his stomach or something, like he's going to murder him. But, props to him, I guess. He doesn't.
I think, though, leaving the fight, I think he definitely is like, this guy's dead. Like, he's going to die. But I'm not but he did it to himself.
He's not.
He did a,
exactly.
He did a defensive swipe, basically, in his mind, I think. It's like, or even if he thinks he didn't, like, either way, he brought it on him. The last thing he says to him before he does it is, don't try it. Don't. And he does, and you see what happens.
Yeah, you can't even watch it either. That's the whole thing, too. Like, where he doesn't want to watch Anakin die. Mm-hmm. He, like, turns away, and he's just like, I'm walking away. I'm not going to watch this because it's too painful emotionally.
And that's why, kind of what we've been doing with these three, what we've been doing kind of talking about these three movies is linking it to Kenobi and to both the character and the series in general. And, kind of almost one of the entire mission statements, I feel, of the Kenobi series is that line in Return of the Jedi of, Luke saying, well, come with me now, and, we can leave this place and be, you can be, I forget what he says, be at peace, or, you can get out of this or something. And Vader says, and it's crazy, rewind. I can't wait for, hopefully one day we can do this for the original trilogy to revisit those, but it's just crazy to hear Vader, that this is like halfway through Return of the Jedi. When Luke and Vader are talking about this, and he's like, it's too late for me, son. He doesn't say, no, I made my choice, and I stuck with it, and he's like, it's too late. He literally says, it's too late for me, son. I'm in my lot in life, and that's it. He's not. Even then he still has those moments, and then you get the line of, Obi-Wan once thought as you do. Well, when? Because he's not giving him much of a chance to say, Anakin, there's still good in you. I believe in you. In this movie, and if anything, after the fight, after he believes that Anakin is dead or anything, Padme is the one to say it to Obi-Wan of, Obi-Wan, there's still good in him, believe me, there's still good in him, which ultimately, for everything bad that he does, and it's a lot of bad stuff, she's right. Luke was right. That's Vader's, when Anakin dies, that's his last words is, tell your sister you were right. You were right about me. And I just think it's crazy just how amazing of a finale this movie was, but also just how much it means to kind of carry us through Kenobi into Episode 4 with, Vader and Obi-Wan having that rematch on the Death Star, and then kind of how not only this fight, but you'd assume the events in Kenobi and you'd assume the events in Episode 4 inform kind of where Vader's redemption is in Return of the Jedi. And I just love that. I just think it's so impressive that this movie ends on such a high note and means so much to inform not only what had come before it, but continues to inform things like Kenobi and Clone Wars and everything like that going forward in, into the future, which I think is an amazing feat of this movie.
Agreed. Very much agreed.
Yeah, I thought it would be very hard to end on a high note for this movie, but it, like you said, it does, with the whole hope of Luke being given to his aunt and uncle, which is obviously going to be where the Kenobi series starts, and then Obi-Wan watching over him. The whole dynamic, I'm really eager to see how they bring their relationship and their turmoil back into a series, and then also Obi-Wan dealing with the whole, I guess, results or consequences of Episode 3 and trying to deal mentally with it. And then you even get in the trailer when Uncle Owen says, like, you trained his father, and he like looks like, how are you gonna bring that up? And then to see like where that leads, and like if Obi-Wan maybe takes a step back from watching over Luke, and then whatever may happen. But I think that it'll definitely connect a lot of the dots, and I think that a lot of these series / like Rogue One story has done that. And if those are any kind of indications of where this Kenobi series is going to go, it's definitely going to be something that is going to be one of the landmark, I guess, I want to say like cinematic, but, you know, stories of the Star Wars saga.
100%.
Yeah. And I was talking to Sean too yesterday when I was watching the movie. Something that, you know, just to speak to on the Kenobi series, like I think maybe not a big part of the series, but I think something that, you know, has to be touched on in the series is that kind of that line from Yoda at the end of the movie where he's like, oh, you know, Qui-Gon has discovered the ability to, you know, communicate from, you know, beyond the grave. And, you know, I think that's something that probably needs to be addressed in this show, I would imagine. I think it'd be a really big missed opportunity. I think Liam Neeson was like, I have nothing to do with this show. I think he's probably lying. But I think that'd be like a really cool payoff for anybody, you know, that's been, you know, I don't know if people have been waiting for that necessarily, but maybe if you watched the movie, you know, like we did, like before the show, I think that'd be a really cool, like, kind of callback to it, to see, you know, how that goes, and what Qui-Gon can, you know, what wisdom he can give to Obi-Wan after this complete failing of Anakin, I feel like. And he says it too. He says he failed. And that is, again, I think that, and again, that goes back to, you know, Sean, like Filoni's whole speech about how the Duel of the Fates is the fate of, you know, Anakin, and, you know, was Obi-Wan really ready to train him as his own? And I think that all kind of, you know, loops back into itself, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, no, 100%. Brandon, what do you kind of get from this whole thing, or how do you feel about the scene and the fight and kind of the breakdown of their relationship, and how do you feel thinking back on that stuff, and how do you think it might, you know, influence things like Kenobi or others, or how does it inform your watching of Star Wars going forward?
Like I said, when I rewatch it, it's just the whole dynamic and Anakin going off on his own, and then Obi-Wan. I think you're gonna get a lot of Obi-Wan dealing with it like how Luke dealt with the Kylo Ren situation, and trying to just like distance himself, but then still try to do what's best for whatever like the new hope is, and that being Luke. I think aside from the whole battle scene or the duel scene, and as I previously mentioned, the whole dynamic between Obi-Wan and Uncle Owen, and their dynamics between like trying to keep Luke away from the whole history of where he comes from, to where he needs to be the one to restore this idea of the Jedi and bring balance to the Force, because like TJ just said, he feels like he failed Anakin, and he failed ultimately Qui-Gon because of his last promise to Qui-Gon, and then he's like going to try to make it up. So I feel like he's going to over push a lot of things, and this may lead to the issues that arise in Kenobi. But yeah, I just think that it all ties back to, like TJ just said, the understanding of Anakin being failed by Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan dealing with the failure going forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's going to be a major theme.
Which is kind of crazy too, because it's like Obi-Wan really did like anything he kind of could. Like he did everything that he could for him. He still failed. But I don't think I almost feel like no matter what, like whatever he does, you know, if he were to go back and redo everything, like I still think it ends the same. It did.
Yeah, I don't think it's like Luke's story where Luke made a choice,
right?
When he like sees in Kylo Ren's mind, rather than like Obi-Wan did everything like the right way, but wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I still think it kind of goes back to the whole, like, it doesn't help that, like, the Jedi are very much stuck in their ways and they're not willing to kind of advance maybe with the universe as a whole, kind of. You know, just in their teachings and how they go about things. So that's why, you know, I think, you know, no matter what you do, how far you go back, it just ends up the same.
Yeah.
Do you think if... Sorry, I'm just curious, because TJ, you had brought this up. Do you think that the Force Ghost of Liam Neeson being featured in the Kenobi series would be a bigger surprise than the Luke appearance in the end of Mando? Like shock factor. Would you be like, oh my gosh, I don't...
Shock factor.
Yeah, like I didn't expect this to happen.
I always interpreted it as, and I know it's obviously like Force Ghosts are a thing. I always thought maybe it would just be a voice. Like I never thought like he'd show up like full form. I mean, for me personally, like the Luke thing is just bigger for me. But I know like Qui-Gon, you know, people love that character. So I think it's a possibility, and I think it would probably, I would say yes, because I think it would mean more too. Not that the Luke thing doesn't mean more, because, you know, or mean anything, but like, you know, that is Obi-Wan's, you know, master, and he watched him die in front of him, and he made this promise, and he failed, and now he's like, he doesn't know what to do. And I think for me, you know, I think probably for me actually, and, you know, maybe majority of people, like, I think that would be a very major surprise and a very good surprise. Yeah, I just think I think that'd be awesome. John?
Yeah, I think it would be a big, huge surprise to a lot of people, I feel like. But I feel like compared to Luke and Mando, I mean, that was different on a scale of, like, not only was it just like, oh my god, it's Luke, but it was up to that point. You don't think maybe, you know, aside from maybe Ahsoka, that it would be, you know, that we would even get a legacy character or a Jedi character, you know what I mean, in that show, let alone getting Luke, you know what I mean? I mean, there was a reason that on set and everything, they pretended like it was going to be Plo Koon coming in to, like, rescue, which, you know, it would have been like, oh, okay, well, wow, all right, he survived the crash somehow. But I still think, like I said, though, for a lot of people that might not, like, follow any production stuff, or not to say that any production stuff has revealed that Liam Neeson was on it or anything. I'm just saying, like, someone who's just like, man, I loved the prequels, you know, let's check out what this Kenobi show has. You might be like, oh, it would be cool if, like, you know, Liam Neeson came back for one of these. I don't know how they would do that or what would happen. And then to have him show up as a Force Ghost, I think that would be very, very cool and surprising and pleasing to a lot of different people, I think. But yeah, do you think that we will see him in some capacity?
Maybe not see him. Now that you brought up, like, the whole voice thing, I think that's the most likely. Is he the first one to have, like, the Force Ghost? Like, is that confirmed? I thought I heard that somewhere, but yeah, okay. Yeah. So that I mean, that's pretty substantial. Yeah, that's pretty substantial. So I feel like that should be a part of the series.
I think secretly, this is my big Kenobi thing. I think that the whole, obviously the plot and the story is going to be he gets dragged off Tatooine to do this, protect Luke and do all that. But I think that his internal thing that he needs to overcome is this. I think that we are going to get episode 1 kind of like Rey with the, like, you know, be with me. I think that we are going to get Obi-Wan struggling, reaching out to try and contact Qui-Gon, not succeeding, you know, and then I think that, you know, maybe then he finds out that Anakin's alive, that, you know, okay, you know, maybe it all comes together, and you go from, you know, Obi-Wan once thought as you did, you know, that maybe he goes, all right, the first time I didn't really give him much of a shot, so I'm going to go and I'm going to face him, and I'm going to say, Anakin, you can come back. We can do this together, you know, really extend the olive branch, and then have Vader just, you know, smack it away. And then Obi-Wan can kind of find a little bit of peace of, all right, it's not all on me. It was a conscious choice that he made. It's not my failure entirely. He made he made his choice. You know what I mean? And then maybe once he comes to peace with, you know, all that stuff, then I feel like maybe you get Qui-Gon right at the end of the show as this moment of, you know, the necessary events of the Kenobi series was so that Obi-Wan can finally, this tease that we got all the way back in Revenge of the Sith 17 years ago, that he can finally commune with Qui-Gon, like Yoda tells him to, you know, try to do. And I think it would be so impactful for this movie, for the series, for the character, if, you know, Qui-Gon has these teachings for you, go, you know, speak with him, try to commune with him, and then we find out it has taken him 10 years because he's so torn up inside, you know, about everything, about, you know, protecting Luke or whatever, that he can't kind of center himself, so he's not going to be able to, you know, reach out to Qui-Gon type of thing, which I think is really, really cool. I think that's. I think
you can also have the whole. Yeah, I think the whole dynamic of maybe he doesn't want to talk to Qui-Gon as much because he feels like his last dying wish was to train the boy.
Yeah, he feels like
and
maybe
that was something that
failed him.
Yeah, like he failed him, and so like, do I really want to tell my master that his dying wish was like a failure of mine? So it's just, as you were talking about, like, this is going through my head, and I'm like trying to think like maybe that's something that they get into, but I don't know. TJ, you can.
Yeah, I mean, something I was just thinking is if I can remember, it literally just escaped my head of what I was thinking. Oh, I remember. You think, or I'm just excited for, and we're kind of talking about Obi-Wan show, and we'll probably wrap up in a few minutes here, but Kenobi show, like, you think like we get that like realization, right? That he's like him like realizing he's alive, right? Or do you think that's like do you think that'll be like an off-screen thing where he already knows? Because how many years after is this? Like
10.
Because I was 10. Okay, so he probably, you know, I'm hoping that we get like the reaction of, oh shit, he's still alive.
Yeah, I feel like because in Legends he found that out like less than a year into hiding, which was like, you know, cool for that story that they were telling. Right. But I think, again, going to that kind of theory I have with like not being able to reach out to Qui-Gon type of thing, I think it'd just be so much more impactful to think, this guy was so torn up inside over everything that happened to him, thinking that Anakin was dead, thinking, man, I am so torn to pieces over what happened in my life and the events that I let transpire, but at least Anakin is gone. You know, he's at, you know, hopefully at peace. You know, maybe he's even squared Anakin away in his mind. You know what I mean? That he's like, you know, all this crap went to shit, and I could have helped stop it. You know, but at least Anakin didn't fully go down the dark path. You know, he thinks that he's got some sort of thing, and then to find out, no, for 10 years, this guy has been rampaging and murdering how many people, you know, taking out all these different things. And then he gets, on top of the already guilt that he has, he then gets the double whammy of, oh my God, I didn't even finish the job. I feel like that is way too juicy of a concept to just explain. Oh yeah, I couldn't, you know, to say to Owen, yeah, I couldn't believe when I found out 8.5 years ago that, you know, Anakin's still out there. You know, like I feel like that just has so much less weight and power to it if he's just like, man, if only I didn't have to protect Luke, I could go out and take care of that Vader guy. You know, it's like I feel like if he found out that Anakin is alive, I think his first thing is going to take him out or going to confront him. Like I don't think that he would just be like, "Oh, Anakin's alive? Man, good luck to whoever has to deal with that." You know, I feel like he has a big degree of like personal responsibility for that.
Right. Yeah, agreed. I think maybe to end this episode, we should probably maybe just each like go around and say like what our favorite, if we can pinpoint one, maybe just our favorite moment of the whole movie. If that's possible. Brandon, you want to start? Should I guess?
Yeah, the clip, and I have it saved as my background on my phone for like ever. It is the eruption behind the two shadow figures, like the two figures along the bridge on Mustafar, and them like holding each other's lightsaber arms, and it's just like them fighting. That one still is my favorite part of the whole movie. I thought just the perfect cinematic like capture of what the movie was about.
Yeah, John.
I think for me, I think what really is the best thing is just that look from Mustafar. I'll go with two shots, two moments that I feel like are like just always will stick with me. Is obviously the head turn with the yellow eyes and the single tear towards his camera that Anakin gives, and then also a few scenes later, just that great, you know, kind of foreground background shot of Anakin standing there, and then Obi-Wan over his shoulder behind him, you know, kind of reacting to his whole, you know, your new empire, you know. I just think that's fantastic. I really love that scene. I think one of my favorite scenes of the movie is that scene with Padme, Anakin, and Obi-Wan. With the whole, you know, Anakin, you're breaking my heart, and then, you know,
and as clunky as the dialogue is, it just works.
Yeah,
it works.
She brought you to kill me.
Yeah, for me, you know, same planet, same kind of space time, Mustafar. But for me, it's it gives me like goosebumps, and it gets me like emotional. Is just the like, the I hate you, and then the I love you, and that whole dynamic, and you know, it gets me like every single time I watch it. And even just like I think it's like 2 minutes before that, when they're kind of facing off, and they're both on their they both have their own like robot thing they're standing on, and he's just like, I have failed you, Anakin, I have failed you. Like, oh damn, like, you know, it just really gets me in. It's like a clip I like will always go back to if I'm not even watching. But yeah, I think that'll probably wrap this episode up. I've been one of your hosts, TJ Cornwell. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of 1 Hour Movie. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you to Brandon for joining us again. Brandon, always welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. And follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much again for joining us for another 1 hour movie, and for joining us for this kind of revisit through the prequel trilogy in anticipation for Kenobi coming up. If you don't know already, we've talked about it on PFN Live a little bit, but our next 1 hour movie is going to be riding into the danger zone with Top Gun in anticipation for Top Gun Maverick coming out at the end of this month. So make sure you are, subscribed on the audio podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, especially. Make sure to 5-star rate the podcast over there on those platforms. It really, really helps boost us up the podcast ratings, the movie podcast ratings, and everything. That way, more people can get the file and everything. And I did see that, you know, our last 1 hour movie did some pretty good numbers. I figured it probably would, just because you know, of the 20th anniversary of Attack of the Clones and everything. But we're happy to see that. Happy to see that more people are engaging on the podcast feeds in general. And like TJ said, make sure to follow us at the official PFN on Instagram, on TikTok, and Twitter. TikTok especially. TikTok has been blowing up like crazy lately. We really, really appreciate it, guys. I mean, the amount of views and stuff that we're getting on some of them is like stuff that we can't even believe. So we really, really appreciate that from you guys. And yeah, I just want to thank Brandon again for coming on here. And last but not least, if you are watching on YouTube, give us a comment of some suggestions of things that you'd like us to talk about on future 1 hour movies. And make sure to subscribe. Click that red button below and the notification bell for any reactions, news, and reviews coming your way. Till then, guys, we will catch you in the next video.
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes. I will do what I must.
You will try.